Welcome. Glad to see everyone this morning. We're glad you're here. We're going to jump right into our fourth session, moving from analog to digital. So in reading this section, I hope you found some really, really good content in there that kind of made you start thinking. And so the first activity we're going to do together is called a brain dump. And we discovered this last year and just really loved the idea behind it as an alternative assessment. So I'm going to share my screen and pull up the tab that we have for this brain dump. All right. So over that way I can still see everybody. Okay, good. So the idea behind a brain dump, it shifts the traditional assessments are typically asking students to, read and recall, right? So there's research out there, and Holly Clark has posted something about the efficacy of students and recall, pulling from their memory rather than reading to study and reading to remember. So recalling from memory and just pulling and brainstorming as much as they can. So the idea behind the brain dump is that students, after they have learned something, they recall as much as they can remember. And they have 30 seconds to write down as much as they can remember. After the first 30 seconds, they can then stretch their memory, thinking a little bit more, 1 more minute to write what they know until that timer goes off. And then finally, they have a minute to peek at other people's slides. They have a minute to go and check out what other students have written. So this is an all-inclusive single slide deck where students are all contributing each their own slide. And that last section is where they go out and look at everybody else's slide to see what they have missed. And so the idea behind this is not to cheat per se, but it's to continue stretching their memory to see, oh yeah, I remember learning about that. I had a brain block and couldn't pull it back, And so this is a great exercise, a great activity that you can do with your students to help them beyond just the regular multiple choice test or the assessments that you have to give for iReady or whatever. So we're gonna do this. We're gonna get in there and we're gonna do this together. So Ashley just shared the link to the doc, and you'll have the opportunity to get in there. Let me go back to this first slide. There are the instructions for you. First 30 seconds, you're writing the things you easily remember. This is a short time frame. Then we'll take a short break, a couple of seconds break, come back together, and then we'll stretch our brains even more, thinking hard to remember anything else, and then finally we'll look at everybody else's, okay? So I'm going to pull up the first timer, and when I say go, you start adding. Share this tab instead. All right, y'all ready? Whoa, it went ahead. Okay, here we go. All right, 30 seconds to add in your content that you remember from moving from analog to digital. I guess I should have said that earlier. Okay, pause. 30 seconds was not long at all, was it? Do you need 30 seconds more? Let's take 30 seconds more to keep adding to it. Okay, Thoughts so far? I know the time obviously was very short. And, with the content that we are reflecting and remembering on, obviously your students wouldn't be trying to recall things this deep and intense as we are doing right now. um, but just giving that short amount of time for the things that come back easily to you. Okay. Okay. So are we ready for a minute? Let me share. 1 minute timer. Get that pulled up. All right. Here we go. All right. 1 minute to dig deeper and add additional thoughts in that center column. A little less than 30 seconds left. Five seconds. I'll give just a little bit more time to get those thoughts down. Okay. So now we are going to take, we do 3 minutes. Let's do 3 minutes. I'm not going to run the timer this time. Let's do 3 minutes so you have an opportunity to thoroughly read over what everyone else has said on their slide deck. And see, Christine's got a question.
I couldn't even get to the screen. All I had was the timer on my iPad. So I had to switch to the computer, but now I can see the brain dump, but I couldn't earlier.
Okay. I bet you I bet it was because you're working on an iPad. And
yeah, I had to get off the iPad. Now I'm on a computer. So sorry about that.
No worries. No worries. Yeah. You can just pick up wherever and yeah, all good. Yeah. There's the link for the brain dump again. All right. So we're going to say 3 minutes. Peek at everybody else's. Stretch your memory some more. Add in on the third column or finish adding in on the other columns too. It's up to you. And we'll come back together, say 9:15. 9:15.
Christine, did you see the link?
I can't even get. Yeah, that's the problem. I was on the iPad. Yeah.
If you go into the chat, that's where you can access the link.
All right, that's where I'm going to go back because it wasn't on there. Okay.
All right, so it is right at 9:15, and I want to give you an opportunity to share about first off, what you think about this activity. Now, obviously, execution-wise, could have done a little bit better of a job. We want to make sure that everybody's name is up at the top, the topic that we're focusing on is up at the top, as well as timing too. So I'm thinking about like the brainstorming. Maybe I should have given you some time before starting to think about what you would want to add in that. So the 30 seconds is more typing time rather than think time. Same thing for the minute to stretch your brain. Because a lot of that time, especially with younger students, that's going to take a good bit of time. And obviously you can adjust this to fit, to better meet the needs of your students as far as timing goes. So there are some things that I could do better the next time around. But takeaways from this activity. What are your thoughts first on the activity and then about the things that you added into the 3 columns?
I feel like I've done this before, but it's kind of cool to be, reminded about it. Yeah, it took me a minute to get started. I see that now. I know you told me to put my name up there, but I couldn't figure out where to put it, so I got it there now. But yeah, I think it's a neat thing that I could maybe bring into my classroom.
I enjoyed it. I did find myself panicking, like, oh my gosh, what did I read kind of thing, which is probably what I do with my students when I ask them, what have you learned? I do think for 2nd grade, definitely towards the end of the year activity, definitely more time. Typing in a quick way like that is difficult when, we really haven't spent a lot of time learning to type. And that's what I'm, one of the things that I do typing agent daily almost in my class, but I still find they're not fast typers. So like even when we're publishing things, I know it's going to take a while. So that is a concern for me. But I also too think this could be used in my classroom at the beginning of the year with them thinking and then maybe sharing out and I type it, because even I'm a good typer and it took me some time, to get my thoughts down, but that they could share out and I could type it there and then do a little bit more and then kind of like review it and in a more verbal way, I guess is what I'm trying to say.
Yeah, and that's not to say that this has to be done digitally. Obviously it's here, but for students who have more difficulty typing or it takes them longer, like younger elementary students, that's going to be an issue. So it could be that this becomes a paper pencil activity. If writing things on a piece of paper is easier for them or would be more efficient time-wise, that's definitely something that you could do. The activity is still similar, So what else?
I really, in the book she talked about, and it kind of blew my mind, doing voice to text, especially in the writing unit. And I kind of struggle with, I know I need, we got to develop our handwriting in 2nd grade, but in an activity like this, that might be really neat, because then we can go a little bit faster, we can move quicker, we can get our ideas down versus the struggling through putting them down.
Yeah. What were some things that after you had reflected on somebody else's slide that came back to you that you remembered reading and it stood out to you as you were reading, but for whatever reason didn't come back to you when you were reflecting this morning? What were some of those things, and speak to that?
I'll keep going, keeping it simple, starting small. That was, and I know that, but it's good to remember when you're being overwhelmed by all this information to focus on one thing at a time, or small things, small changes.
Yes, both in our practice as educators and for students too. Anything else?
I liked the fact, or remembered the fact, of focus on the process as compared, like I'm looking at Arthur's screen, focus on the process as compared
to the product. I had not remembered that at first, but when I saw his, I was like, oh yeah, that's such a good, good reminder of that. So many times the kids are, well, I would just want to finish this, or I want mine to look the best, or, whatever it is, but that's not really truly the end goal. It's more about the learning that takes place in the process of that. And to remember too, that not all the time is it technology that gets them through the process to the product. Like, sometimes that's hard for people to hear the technology people say it's not always about the technology, but going back to keeping it simple and small. And sometimes you just have to start with that and then move it into the technology. And it doesn't have to be everything all the time. That's the other thing that sometimes I think we think, oh, we've got to do it all in a digital way, everything all day long. And that's so not true. And too much for the kids and too much for us, with everything else that's going on, to have to think, oh, now I've got to create this digitally, or now I have to think through this project that we used to do. How can I turn it into something that uses technology? And that doesn't always, have to happen. So those were things that I thought of.
One thing I was just going to bring up, piggybacking off of what you said, Charlotte, about adapting this for the littles, just to make sure everyone is aware, up in the insert on a Google slide, they can actually do an audio recording. I just wanted to be sure everyone knew that. And so if you have students that do need that adaptive type technology, or that might be, Charlotte, an easier way, they could have 30 seconds to say all the words or whatever that they could remember about that topic, and then a minute, and then they can go listen to other people. So I just wanted to point that out. Oh, are you recording me?
Yeah, I had a student this year that did use the talking into the Google Docs for all of their writing because they had dysgraphia, and it's amazing how more creative they are when they can just talk into the computer. And I think it would be great if we just let them talk into the slides. I think you would get a lot more information from them, and they wouldn't be as stressed as, to where they're, typing the words correctly and all of that. They can go back and edit after.
Yeah, just so I don't know if you noticed on the shared screen, there's a microphone that popped up in the left. So there's a shortcut, a keyboard shortcut that pulls up a speech to text generator. It's Control-Shift-S. S stands for speech. And we can put that in the chat, but using that shortcut enables the microphone. You may have to enable it on your computer first, but you notice down here at the bottom, as Ashley was speaking, it was picking up her text and converting that to text. So Control-Shift-S is the shortcut for that on Windows and Chromebooks. So yes, speaking to that, yeah, I see Arthur's face. That's awesome.
Yeah, so that's different than what I was referring to. So that's just another option. So.
Yeah. All right. So in thinking about the transition, I'm going to stop sharing this screen so we can get back to just us. And thinking about this transition of moving from strictly analog to digital, I want to point out there are a couple of paragraphs in this first chapter on page 71, the second and third paragraph there. And I just want to read it out to you, and I'll prompt you with a question after to think about. So before we begin thinking about this transition, we have to remember it's more than just going paperless. It's about using technology to amplify personalization, creativity, collaboration, critical thinking, communication, and problem solving. We don't want to simply replace old tasks with new technology, but make the tasks authentic and meaningful so students can develop the most important literacy of learning itself. With Chromebooks, we can now focus on the process of learning rather than just the end product. You've been given Chromebooks in your classroom so that you can uncover the process, not just give online quizzes. So, and I know we've spoken to that about the process of learning rather than just the product. Speak to me about how this year you'll go about capturing true knowledge of learning and understanding. True knowledge and understanding. How are you going to go about capturing that this year? deep question, isn't it?
I'll get started. In this whole section, I don't know what page it was talking about, multiple choice versus, things like that. And I really think, and I think I've said this before in the book study, whenever you talk to a child and you give them the time to tell you what they've learned, you just gain so much more. And you can really pinpoint, one, whether they really know they've learned it or not, or two, where the misunderstanding has come into play, and you can then reteach or address it at that point. So using these digital platforms where they can record their response or things like that, I feel like gives them an opportunity to kind of go more in depth than what they would fill in a multiple choice question or even write. They're, for me, second grade, they're not going to write a whole paragraph, but they might tell me a whole paragraph. So that's one thing that I really want to use a lot more, so that I can just dive deeper into whether, yes, they know it, not just say A, B, or C answer. And did they guess that, or did they really know that?
I think that's great. Yeah. So often we are intentional about meeting with our students and getting one-on-one with them so that we can listen to them. But, in a lot of cases, especially in the secondary world, when you've got, 6 or 7 periods of students, that is really hard to do on a consistent basis. It may be possible at the beginning of a 9 weeks or at the end of the unit, but by then it's almost too late, So utilizing some of these platforms, like you were saying, Charlotte, allows that timing to be wider, and you've got more opportunities to do that. Have any of you utilized some of the platforms that she mentions here, like Flipgrid, or I know Seesaw is more elementary, but I have heard of secondary teachers using it too. Any of those that y'all have used? We'll talk more to those in a minute too, but any of them that y'all currently use?
I'll jump in and go ahead, Elizabeth.
Oh, sorry. No, I've used Flipgrid in my middle school classroom. The feedback that I get from students is mixed on that. They tend to just have whatever they've written or worked on, and they just read that. They just literally sit there on the screen and just read it verbatim. And the feedback that I get from them is that they feel awkward doing it. And so I don't know if that's a function of just middle school being awkward in general because it's middle school, or if maybe I just need to push them through that a little bit to where they are more comfortable, because it's important to be able to, speak publicly and feel comfortable communicating that way. So anyway, but that's been my experience with it, is it's been a bit mixed, but like I said, it may be something I just need to push them through a little bit more.
I think that's a middle school thing. Part of it is we hear that from lots of middle school teachers. I can remember when Flipgrid kind of first came onto the scene, it did not have nearly all the features and effects and tools. And so teachers were asking us, is there any way for students to hide their face? And because you didn't have the option to turn the camera around or to use a whiteboard or all that, because their students, didn't want to have their face shown or really want to use it. Have you tried, this is just a thought that came to me, have you tried or have you used it maybe at the beginning of the year in a fun, non-threatening, not attached to content way, more like that culture building, relationship building, let's just check this out and you can do whatever you want to with it, so that they have the opportunity to literally play and explore with it before they actually have to use it for something that you are going to be listening to or where they're sharing their information. And maybe you already have. That was just a thought that, sometimes if they're comfortable with it or they see all the cool stuff that they can add to it or do with it, that maybe they would be more inclined to not couldn't use it.
Yeah, I have, but I've used the very seriously uncool thing of, well, introduce yourself to me kind of thing at the beginning of the school year. And that was just a bomb. Like, I will not do that again. That's just the worst. So it's the equivalent of us going to PD and having to do icebreakers. It's just not, it's not good. So I'm trying to figure out some kind of prompt or something, because there are a lot of new features. When this first came out a couple of years ago, like you said, there just wasn't much to it. And they do have more options now. And I know some of our ELA teachers have had them record podcasts and things like that. And that just seems really cool. And I'm like, I want to do stuff like that too. So figuring out a way to make it less awkward for them is going to be my challenge, I think.
Earlier, I was just going to give a plug for Seesaw, and just for those of you who may be interested in using it, maybe haven't used it. Honestly, the biggest thing I saw come out of it was connecting the parents with their students' learning, and it was really powerful. I would just basically encourage my kids. There was kind of a requirement there that they shared one piece of artifact from the classroom that they had done that week and shared it with their parents. And it was really powerful to see parents get involved with the classroom. We're always trying to get parents a little more involved in that learning process. And so if you haven't checked Seesaw out, it's really worth at least checking out. And it doesn't have to be like a perfect recording. It's very raw and natural, and the kids really enjoy it because they love having that type of platform to share on. And Seesaw's got even some great new additions where they have integrated lessons on there. I mean, things that are even new that I haven't explored, firsthand as a teacher in the classroom, but there's some new content. So just loved Seesaw and the connection it gave to parents in the classroom. So.
Talking about being nervous, I didn't realize I was nervous to record something for a group of my peers, and I was just taking way too long getting it together. Like that video we had to do, I'm like, what is this? And I'm like, oh, I think it's just having your peers, and you're going to present something to them, so you want it to be right. And so, Elizabeth, I feel maybe what your students are feeling a little bit. I just didn't realize that, but I still thought it was kind of cool and exciting, especially when you get into the filters and stuff. Like I put a little fly up there. I'm like, that's weird. Let's do that, because there's literally a fly in my house right now. I can't get it out. It's the worst. Anyways.
And there's a partnership with Canva now. So anything, you can go into Canva and search Flipgrid, and then the students can download that and upload it into Flipgrid. So like there's even this new partnership that opens up a whole nother world of possibilities with that. But we could take a whole hour talking about that. So anyway, don't want to go down that rabbit hole, but just if you're interested, check it out, Canva, and search Flipgrid templates or Flipgrid.
Any other thoughts or ideas about how you can capture the knowledge and understanding of your students this year? Kind of spend a little while talking about Flipgrid.
Yeah, I like that portfolio where we can really see the progression with learning artifacts. And I love that term, learning artifacts. I don't know why, but it keeps sticking in my head, especially where they are at the beginning of the year and how we're moving. And then we can reflect on that together, individually, videos, whatever we're doing. But I don't know, it seems really cool. And I really like this idea of like, I tried Seesaw a couple of years ago as a parent communication app, and it was too complicated at that moment for me. But if students can share something to their parents that they're proud of or their guardians, like that's really neat. That's pretty exciting to me. So I like that a lot. I feel like everything's been, grades go back in the folder and then they come out, and maybe they go home, maybe they don't come back, and I've got them scanned in, and there's a lot going on there. But I don't know. This seems really neat. I haven't even looked into it like this year yet. So.
Well, and like the parents respond back to their kids on their work, and the kids go nuts. I mean, they just are so excited. And I mean, I didn't really expect that to come out of it when I first started using Seesaw. And then we ramped that up because kids wanting to make things that their parents would be proud of. And so it just kind of increased that motivation. So yeah, let me know how you like it, Arthur, if you end up implementing that.
Yeah. Thank you.
Yeah, I'm thinking secondary students, if they were to send their work home and share with their parents, they may be a little, Mom, stop.
Yeah, some of them would not appreciate that at all. But I think it's cool. Because I never hear from parents at all. I'll have 130 students or more, and sadly, most of the time I do emails for positive stuff too, but I never really get feedback one way or another, even on that. So
Yeah, something that we have kind of talked about as a team here is what could like a comprehensive portfolio look like that follows students from grade to grade, and how it could be like a cumulative representation of everything that students have learned and worked on through their years in elementary school or in middle school or in high school, and that be while the seesaw joke was funny for secondary, it is important that they show themselves and show what they have accomplished throughout their school career, and there are different methods and ways of creating something like that. So that's something that we've kind of brainstormed over the past few months and have thought about exploring further. We could go down the path of using a Google site for housing a digital portfolio, or even a slide deck. So if that's something you want to explore more and see about incorporating into your class this year, we can definitely work with you on that.
I want to add something. We use Blooms, and we have for years now. It's very similar to Seesaw, and I love it. I actually just got a email from Blooms where it's comparing Blooms and Seesaw. So I haven't opened it yet, but I'm very curious to see. But I think they're pretty comparable. And it might be something you want to add to your list, Blooms with a Z. And every year we just get all the parents to put the app. It has the digital portfolio. It has like dojo behavior for the youngers if you want to use that. It's wonderful. It has everything. It has everything all in one place. Emails, parents can talk to each other, events, you can sign ups, volunteers, everything is on there. And I know Seesaw has changed a lot. So that's what I'm curious to see if they have added stuff that Blooms hasn't, but that's another resource you might want to check into.
Yes, I honestly, Charlotte, I don't know, but I had to always use Sign Up Genius, or some other, a Google. So that's great to know as far as Blooms. Everyone's like shaking their head, Sign Up Genius.
Yeah, and I'll say what I love.
The calendar.
The calendar is there. It's everything is there. And what I really love and have found an appreciation for the years we didn't have a room mom, but you can assign like your room mom as a person, administrator or whatever they call it on Blooms, and they can actually go in and create signups and things like that. I've had a lot of parents, like the parents can talk to each other, and I can see it, of course. But if someone has a question about the class that everybody was wondering and I can respond, I don't even have, I set up an email group, at the beginning of the year, just in case of emergencies, but really my parents know that like any communication comes on Blooms, and it's always there. Like Christine said, the calendar's there, reminders. It is so easy. I love it.
Thanks for sharing about that. I don't know that I even knew about it, so I'm gonna.
The parents really like it because they don't have to go search for an email. They can just go to Blooms and they're like, "What did I sign?" They're at the grocery store. I forgot what I'm supposed to. And then also the calendar sends them a reminder each day of what's going on in the class. Like if we have some sort of special event, or if the school has a special event, if it's Kona Ice, any of that type of stuff, it's just easier for the parent. And if they have more than one child's teacher that uses Blooms, it's all on that same page. They just have to click on the teacher to get the feed. So it's pretty cool.
Neat.
Yeah. And we put all our newsletters, everything's on there. So it's all in one spot.
Okay, definitely something that I'm going to check out. Definitely. Thanks for sharing that. I appreciate it. Well, let's look at turn over onto page 88, and we're going to just talk for the next little while about the assessment for, as, and of learning. So question is, what is your understanding of assessment for learning? How does that look in your classroom? And do you have tools that you use for that assessment for learning? I guess kind of our first question is, what is your understanding of it, and how does this look in your classroom, the assessment for learning?
So I'll jump in. In middle school science world, for me anyway, this looks a lot like an exit ticket or some other basic formative assessment, or even like a post-lab reflection. That goes a little bit deeper than just like the conclusion where you talk about your hypothesis was supported, but going more into this is the kind of like a claim evidence, reasoning claim evidence justification, where they have to use the science concept to support what they saw and make that connection a little deeper. And so that's a way to kind of see the thinking. And so the challenge for me has been like, what are the digital tools I can use for that? Because, 130 little slips of paper becomes difficult. And so I was looking at like Jamboard and some other things, because I could set that up for a class and they could just post anonymously, even if they wanted to, and we could look at the different responses and so on. So, and I don't know why I haven't done that yet up to this point. I just haven't.
Yeah, I love it. Jamboard's easy to use too. And back to what we talked about, start small and start simple. That's super small and super simple, but very effective. And you can use it for lots of different things too. But I love your example of what, assessment for learning looks like in your classroom. So I'd encourage you to try that one out.
Like a temperature check, like the exit tickets, just like it was especially in math, seeing what groups need to be pulled back and what interventions need to happen or what accelerations like. Yeah, it says don't grade these. I underlined that. I know there's things that come back and I'm like, I need a grade for this. Do I have it? And then maybe I'm picking the wrong thing because it's not, it's not summative. So
Yeah. Sometimes I think, especially if we find or are told or whatever, hey, you have to have so many grades for this or whatever, that we tend to, oh, I need to grade everything, and back to that, the process of it, not the product, even for us, to remember that a lot of these things, especially the assessment for learning, is just for us to know where are they and where are we going with this group of students or this group of students, or do I need to regroup? Can I push forward faster? Those types of things. So, yeah. How about assessment as learning? What does that look like in your classroom? What's your understanding of it? Assessment as learning.
I don't really know if I have a correct understanding of this one. But in my mind, when they're doing independent work and I'm looking through it and I can kind of go more like in real time or use that for the next day's small group or something like that, just like basically their reflections or what they would, do independently. That's what that makes me think of.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think the key to this one is an ongoing assessment that students do to reflect and monitor their progress. So it's more about the students, which sometimes I think we maybe don't do enough of that, allowing them to reflect on where they are in their learning and where they are in their process. So I think part of it can be, Charlotte, like what you were talking about too, kind of that the line of assessment for learning and assessment of learning is kind of blurred. They kind of bleed into each other. But a second part to the assessment as learning is that student piece to it, allowing them to think about their learning, about allowing them to reflect, not just necessarily fill out an exit ticket or, that kind of thing, but where are they? What steps do they need to take? What in the big picture of the standard, what do they feel like they already know and what do they feel like they need to continue to
Okay, then I
learn
changed
and
my
work on?
answer.
But I think what you said is right on too. I think it's kind of a mix of both of those things.
Yeah, thinking about what you just said, I just think those are a lot of verbal conversations that we have in second grade then. When we start after, Monday, okay, what are we learning? How are you feeling about it? We can, like you said, a temperature check, and I am always amazed at the honesty of my babies because, thumbs up, thumbs sideways, like stuff like that. They're real and they don't mind. And I love it because, I can know, okay, who feels good about this and who doesn't. So maybe that's more appropriate.
Yeah, that's exactly what I was going to say. Are they informal assessments? Show me 1, 2, or 3. I can read and write short vowels or whatever it is. And you're right. They're totally honest. Like they're not looking at their friends. They're hiding it right here. And they're just boom, boom, boom. Like, nope, I don't get this. So I love that.
Mm-hmm.
I also love the feedback component of this part where they're getting feedback from their peers. And so if you're setting it up like, something that comes to mind might be like Padlet, something where they can interact, Flipgrid, where they can respond to one another. And that feedback is such a part of like human nature. Like we all need that, and unfortunately in the classroom, time is our biggest competitor. And so we just don't always have the time to give that feedback, but maybe to let the peers give one another more feedback and therefore they're still getting that feedback. And, we have to mold some kids when giving feedback and help them learn how to give feedback to one another. But that's a great, life skill. So I like that component of the assessment as learning too, is getting that feedback from peers.
I think too, there's here recently, in both elementary and secondary, there's been a lot of emphasis on student tracking their growth within iExcel or iReady. And so while that technically is assessment as learning, they're monitoring where they are in their learning through those platforms. It's, at least from my experience and what I've seen in some of these classrooms, is that it's more about the number rather than the actual learning and where they are in their progress. It's about, showing that they jumped up. And so I just wonder how we could take that energy and excitement that some teachers have about showing that growth and students reflecting on that and how we can apply that to the actual content that's being taught. Just wanted to throw that out there.
How about assessment of learning? What does that look like in your classroom?
I'm thinking of an end of unit math test. I mean, the end product of writing, a writing unit.
I think all of those, the summative evaluation, whatever that looks like, at the end to make sure that they have mastered those standards, have made growth in some area. Yeah. Are there digital tools that you already use in the classroom and or that you would like to try to use in any of these assessment for, assessment as, or assessment of learning? We've mentioned a couple of them, but are there others that maybe we haven't mentioned that you've tried before, or after reading this chapter and thinking about it, you're like, okay, I really want to start to use more digital tools for assessment, and what could those digital tools be?
I feel like we're going back to the same ones. Seesaw and Flipgrid are my big two ones.
Okay.
I'm excited about HyperDoc, especially. I don't know. I just like how this writing lesson was structured for me a lot. Especially the brainstorming piece. Like, I don't know.
Yeah, I was going to add, the brainstorming digitally, I think it's great. I'm thinking specifically about writing. And, you know, I always hesitate to give too many ideas because then becomes their idea. But when I allow them to share out ideas, it kind of gets their brains going, and, you know, they realize, you know, think about other things. So I thought it would be really neat to be able to have, typically I just handwrite them up on the board, you know, but I thought several of these platforms would be a good way for it to be there and me to pull up the next day and the next, you know. So the brainstorming for writing, I thought that would be an easy way for me to incorporate.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, to piggyback off of what Charlotte was saying, the writing process, and Arthur as well, that was really helpful for me. I do argument-driven inquiry as part of my curriculum. And so writing and peer reviewing those reports, the ADI people want you to print and give it all on paper. That becomes unwieldy when you have 130 plus the rubrics plus everything else, but digitizing that. And I'm going to also be using this with inclusion students this year. And so one of the things I was looking at was making a digital graphic organizer for them. And I know I'll have one visually impaired student. And so the text to speech or speech to text is going to be important as well. So but I loved the brainstorming, and I liked how they had the peer revision structured as well. I feel like that kind of dovetails nicely with the ADI process.
Absolutely. Anything else about that kind of section, whether it's the assessments or the digital writing, information literacy, anything else that kind of stuck out, or that you're like, I really want to wrap my head around this a little bit more for next year?
Do we have that? Oops, sorry.
Go ahead.
Adobe Spark. Do we have access to that?
We
Is
do.
it through
It's
the
actually,
Express?
it's called Creative Cloud Express. Absolutely. Okay. So if you you can access it through Clever and log in with your Google account.
Okay.
And then it's also found in the shelbyed.org bookmarks up in the top left hand, and it says Adobe Spark still, but when you log in, it's Adobe Creative Cloud.
Okay, great.
So I think Ashley's going to show that. So yeah, we have the education license to it, so we have access to it all. Our students have access to it. So
thank you. Very cool.
That's actually what I was going to say. I'm going on year 3 of I'm going to teach this to my students, and then this will be the year Adobe Spark happens.
Yay!
I love it. It's just, I know that it's pretty easy to use, and I think they'll pick up on it quickly. It's just the time to teach it and to show it, and not, oh wait, we have to wrap up this writing unit and move to something else, because we use Google Slides, Docs all the time, and also Google Site is another one that I'm like, every year they're going to make a Google Site, and then just time runs out. So that's on my to-do list as well.
All right, we're going to hold you to it.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Both of them are great.
Maybe that accounts for what I need.
Yeah. I love Adobe Creative Cloud because it is simple. There's not a whole lot of choices once you get into whether you're making a video or you're making a web page or you're making a project. And so that's especially helpful, I think, for the kids due to what you're saying, Charlotte, like the time factor to teach them, but then also to allow them to create too. And so I love that one just for the simplicity of it. And it's very professional looking at the end. And those of us that aren't in that realm of, digitally creative kind of thing, I don't have that kind of degree. It's super helpful. So.
Yeah, and just to clarify, because it's said as, sorry, Charlotte, I was just going to clarify. It's called Adobe Creative Cloud now, but Adobe Spark was its old name. So you're going to see that name interchangeably. And I know that's really confusing for people. It's the same thing. So the bookmark still says Adobe Spark, but when you get into it, it's going to say Adobe Creative Cloud. Same thing. Didn't want anybody to be confused or wonder. Sorry, Charlotte, go ahead.
It's okay. I was just going to say, I'll have kids once they learn Google Slides, like at home or on their own time, making, Google slideshows, and it could just be about, things they're interested, whatever, just completely not academic related. They are doing it for fun. So I've even had a thought that like I could teach them, I'm still going to call it Adobe Spark. I'm just probably going to keep happening, but show it to them. And then those like early finishers and the students that are interested in doing that thing, or I see that they're doing like Google Slides on their own, they can just explore it and kind of, and then that sparks interest in the other students, and it's just trickles from there. And that's how those things go. So I even thought if I could just show it to them real briefly, and then I know that they'll catch on to it. And then whenever I want them to use it for an academic purpose, they would have had prior exposure and gotten all the playing out and things like that. So that's kind of part of my plan.
Love it. Love it. And I'll just throw in a little plug here for the Merge Conference next week, because Lindsay Irvin is a teacher at Clear Intermediate, and she is doing a session on Adobe Creative Cloud. She is a huge Adobe user, and so she does some amazing things. She has her kids do some amazing things with it. So I'll just put a plug in, for Merge, but also for that specific session, just because we're talking about it. So, all right. Well, hopefully you will think about that assessment piece, because it is a part of our day and our, education, as well as that digital writing piece, and use some new tools in that with your students. So.
And just, we're going to kind of end this session on a very important topic that was discussed in the book. And I'd love to kind of just hear what you guys maybe are already doing in your classroom, or what your thoughts are on information literacy. And this is a big one. And it was really interesting. In the book, Holly talks about doing this little practice or little assessment activity with a group of 5,000 teachers. And within that 5,000 teachers, like 5 of them were able to have a positive, like have the end result she was looking for, basically. And so all of that to say, I think this isn't just something for our students. I think that we all can focus more on information literacy, because there is so much right at our fingertips. And it also talks about how students, they're all about trial and error and exploration on these devices. And so they're just like going out there, first thing they see, oh, let's check this out, let's do this. And sometimes they're impatient, or they want to get done. And so that's just going to be the source of information that they use. They don't even know or have the tools to check that information for credibility. And so I just was interested, like, what are your thoughts on this? What are you already doing in the classroom to, grow that information literacy?
So for science, this is a really huge thing. And the pandemic over the last couple of years has provided a rich source of information, good and bad. And so that's just been an ongoing thing. So one of the things that I specifically do is I have them pull up a research article that was put out there by NPR about parachutes not being, or parachutes and backpacks having the same effectiveness in preventing injury when jumping from an airplane. And so they go through and they don't believe me, and they read this whole article and everything. And the important thing is to basically look at context and to read the whole article, because when you get down to the end of the article, they explain that the plane is sitting on the tarmac. And not that the plane is, 5,000 feet in the air or whatever. And so that's one thing that I try to teach them, that they need to slow down a little bit. And it's not a serious, controversial kind of thing. But I do find that my 8th graders are actually quite savvy about what is and is not real, more so than their parents. And that just, I think, is testimony to what has occurred in lower grades with showing them that, and also just kind of who they are. They're like, don't lie to me. They want to know the truth, and they'll find it on their own. And they hold each other accountable for that as well. They will call out classmates like, "That's fake, dude. You need to look at this." So.
That's awesome that those conversations are happening in your classroom. I mean, that's definitely the start, is just opening up the classroom environment to those conversations and allowing those, to take place. So that's awesome.
We talk about how anyone can publish something on the internet, and I put up a website that says turtles are eaten by sharks on a regular basis, and is that true or not? Or some other craziness. I forgot the other ones that I did this year, but and then we tend to use kids safe search engines. I think I got the one I used from ISTE, had a blog posting. I forgot which one it is, and I don't have it linked in my research Clever anymore, so I've got to find it again. So when we're doing our animal research, but that kind of blows their mind. I'll show them my website and look, I have a website, and it's just funny. So oh, you can put anything up there. Yeah, I can change that right now. Say what we're eating for lunch today if you want.
It's on the internet. It must be true.
Yeah. But I really like that article you shared, Elizabeth. The airplane's on the ground. I'm like, oh, that's awesome.
Yeah, Elizabeth, do you mind sharing that resource, or emailing it to us or dropping it in the chat? Because I really think that is actually a great activity, because it's all about context. It's all about reading through all the way to the end, because it technically was true in that particular case. But, if we were up in the air 5,000 feet or whatever, maybe not. So I love that. I love just it makes it kind of fun. It's lighthearted, but yet so powerful. So yeah, that'd be great if you could share that. But yes, I mean, it's overwhelming, honestly, this whole topic and idea. It's just an ongoing process, and we really need all hands on deck. This needs to be happening from the beginning of children using, devices, just having those conversations. So that was, really powerful. So, okay, well, it is past 10 o'clock. So I want to kind of wrap things up. Does anybody have any additional thoughts or things they want to share from this particular reading? All right. Well, I just wanted to give you a reminder to be sure that you update your notebook, your digital notebook. I did want to, let me share my screen really quickly. Oh, thank you, Matt. All right. So there are resources there for you, and there are the acronym here that's really useful in helping kids with information literacy. And also effectively searching, that's here. The brain dump that we all did as a group is here, but also the template for you to grab and use in classes over here to the left. And then there's an interesting YouTube video that talks about just what we find on the internet and things like that. So lots of information here that is connected back to what you read. Your assignment for next time that we meet, which will be on Tuesday, July 27th, is going to be adding power and fusing the content areas. It's 102. We're going to pick up where we left off to 127. And then we've given you a slide deck here, and you're just going to pick a slide and put your name in it. And you're going to think about analog to digital. thinking about the lesson or the standard or unit that you pinpointed earlier in the book study. And we're going to think about how can we take that from analog to digital. And so just jot your ideas down there. We've even given you a sticky over here for digital tools and strategies that you just want to jot down. So that's what we want you guys to work on before we meet next time. And we thank you guys so much for joining us. And it was still a great session with a few of us. So thank you so much.
And Ashley, I'm going to add just a little bit on the resources page. You'll see a link to a Padlet. We did not do that during our session today, but it is a Padlet that you can go in and add digital tools that you would like to try or that you've heard of or that you already use specific to the assessment for, as, and of, and then the digital writing piece. So when you open it, you'll see that it's blank. So just with the small group that we had, I just kind of chose for us to talk out loud about it. But if you want to go in and add just some ideas or things that you want to try or that you're already using, just for people to have as a resource to go back, oh, what else could I do or use for assessment of learning or for my digital writing? And Matt and Ashley and I will go in and add some things too. So just wanted to kind of clarify why that was on there.
Yes, thank you, Tracy. Sorry,
You're
I
welcome.
kind of overlooked that one because we didn't use it. But all right, guys. Well, thank you so much. We will see you guys in 2 weeks.
Or maybe next week
Thanks.
for merch.
Oh yeah,
Yeah,
or
hopefully next
week.
week.
That would be
Yeah.
that would be great.
Absolutely.
Bye, y'all. Take
Bye.
care.